Douglas Macgregor is a retired U.S. Army colonel. He's the author of the book Margin of Victory: 5 Battles That Changed the Face of Modern War. In a recent piece for the Washington Times, he praised President Trump's decision to cut off aid to the Syrian rebels. The move, he says, is a big deal. It's a paradigm shift toward a new America First foreign policy. Macgregor writes this: Trump's decision suggests that he is already to discard the bankrupt ideology of the last 25 years, the idea that defending the American people is not enough, that whenever possible, U.S. armed forces ought to be deployed in open-ended missions around the world to punish evildoers. Colonel Macgregor joins us tonight. Colonel, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So the U.S. military, when possible, should be deployed around the world to punish evildoers. I think a lot of people in Washington assume, without questioning that assumption, that that's a basic function of the U.S. military. Why is it not?
Well, first of all, it's not in the Constitution. It has nothing to do with national defense. And I think that's what President Trump has discovered, that, you know, another president said, when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yes.
We've dug ourselves into some very deep holes, huge blood and treasure pits that had nothing to do ultimately with the needs of our national defense.
There was a fascinating study that came out today about the election results, and it showed that in states with a high percentage of active duty servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan, Trump did better than he did in the states where there were fewer casualties in those wars. In other words, his attacks on our foreign policy really resonated with voters. Why don't they resonate here? No one in Washington agrees with that.
Well, Washington is full of people that are very good at defying reality. They look at the world through a very different lens. They see things through elections, through campaign contributions, through constituent interests that are very narrow. They don't necessarily have the connection to reality that the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines in places like Iraq or Syria or Afghanistan have.
Right.
I mean, you could look around in any of these places. The average soldier looks around and says, look, I don't see anything here that is worth my life. I see nothing happening here that we can cultivate. There's nothing we can grow here. Why are we bothering with this? And that's not the first time. But as soon as you reach that point, when the soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine reaches that point, it's no longer an effective force.
So the decision by the White House to stop arming rebel groups in Syria, about whom we know very little, and to the extent we know, it turns out some of them are allied with some real crazies, Al-Qaeda.
Right.
Why is that a big deal? Why does that tell us something bigger?
Well, he's looked at this and he said, very rationally, what are we getting out of it? Remember when he ran for office, he would look at the audience and he would say, how do we profit? How does this help us? What is this doing for the United States? You've got 50 different groups, many of whom are fighting with each other on the ground. Large quantities of weapons and equipment are falling into the hands of Al-Qaeda and Sunni Islamist extremists. We know this. We can't control what's happening. And worse, we have 400,000 people that have died in this civil war, and we're backing a small faction where there's no unity of effort. He's a businessman. He says, it's time to cut our losses and get out. This is a failure. And he also wants to focus more narrowly on ISIS.
Right.
Because we have an interest in the destruction of ISIS. We don't necessarily have an interest in participating in the Syrian civil war. That's a different kettle of fish.
Do we have an interest in ramping up conflict with Russia? A lot of people in Washington, we just passed the sanctions. Only 2 senators voted against those sanctions. Nobody even made the case for why that's good for America. There's a headlong rush toward a more bellicose posture toward Russia. Do we benefit from that?
No, we don't. Look, Russia has been a menace off and on for 300 years to the Western world. Sometimes it's been an existential menace, and sometimes it's been an irritant. We are unlikely to ever be friends with Russia, but that doesn't mean there are not areas where we can reach compromise, where we can find common interests, we can reach agreements. And I think there are a lot of people that want the conflict to continue for other kinds of reasons. Perhaps they profit from it politically, financially, I don't know. But no, we don't benefit from that.
Thank you for saying that clearly. And I hope you're right about the president listening to his instincts on this. Colonel, thanks.